and welcome to Stop Eating My Popcorn, the movie review and discussion show on Bizz 99.9 FM Substitute Radio. I'm your host Glenn Blank. Thank you for joining me. Today will be a before and after episode for the new movie Wonder Woman. The first part will be my expectations, hopes, and fears for the movie just before going into the cinemas. The second part will be just after I leave the cinemas, offering up my initial impressions and analysis. And then part 3 will be my assessment of the movie after a couple of days of thought, contemplation, and perspective. In this episode, for parts 1 and 2, I will be joined by Justen Smith. John is a world-renowned movie critic, a long-time contributor to many publications, including The Breakfast Review, The Weekly Daily, and The International Annual. And he's the author of 2 books, a memoir entitled Hey, Some of Us Are Trying to Watch the Movie, and a collection of his favourite movie reviews over his career entitled Justen Smith and the Continuity Report. With nothing further to add, here are parts 1 and 2 of my discussion with Justen Smith about Wonder Woman, just before we go into the theatres and just after we leave. Hello and welcome to Stop Eating My Popcorn on Bizz 99.9 FM Substitute Radio. I'm your host Glenn Blank, and I'm joined by Justen Smith. Welcome, John.
Hello.
Now, today we're going to see the new movie Wonder Woman. This movie is important for 2 reasons. First, it's the 3rd installment of the DC Extended Universe franchise, and secondly, it's the first ever time that Wonder Woman has been in a feature film as the leading cast. Now, John, you were the one who chose this movie. Why did you choose it?
Well, I thought that it would be, a fun movie to see. Like most people are going to see this movie, they're interested in seeing a female lead character.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of things that we've got to look for. First of all, she's a superhero, so we've got to look at how she is displayed as a superhero in terms of her powers, in terms of her dual personality of being a normal human in stealth and then being the superhero. The other element, of course, is the action, because Wonder Woman is often depicted as the female version of Superman, and Superman action movies are very boring because he's invincible, so it can't actually be interesting because there's no risk. And so can you actually create a risk and a sort of excitement around Wonder Woman combat? That's the second one. And the one that you mentioned, of course, is the female lead, because Hollywood does not have a very good record on having female action hero leads. You just have to think of the way they depicted Lara Croft in the Tomb Raider movie 2 decades ago, and that was revolting. And so can they actually correct their record and actually create a really good, decent, admirable Wonder Woman? What are you looking for in this movie?
Well, I'm actually interested to see the kind of humor that they can do.
Another element to consider is, of course, the question of the DC Extended Universe, because the first 2 movies were, of course, Batman vs. Superman and Suicide Squad, and they were both very badly made movies. They were poorly edited, they were poorly casted, and it's clear that what DC are trying to do is set up for the Justice League movie, which is coming up next year. And so the question is, are they going to make a good Wonder Woman movie that can stand on its own 2 feet, or are we actually just going to see a lead into the Justice League, which would be a very boring movie?
Interesting point.
Now, we should point out that I have never seen any of the Wonder Woman TV shows or cartoons. I've never read any of the comics, and I haven't seen the trailer for this movie. And the same almost applies to you, John?
Yeah, pretty much, except that I saw a special feature
So the important thing to think about is that we are not coming in as great Wonder Woman fans. We don't know the lore, we don't know the history of the series, and so we're not going in with any expectations or prejudices. We don't know what to expect, and so we're going to come in with completely innocent eyes. We really just are going to judge this as a movie on its own without knowing what Wonder Woman should be, because we have no prior experiences of her. We're coming into the car park right now, so we're about to head into the theatres, and we're going to be seeing this movie, and we'll come back afterwards with what our impressions are.
An incredibly detailed and well-educated review.
Well said, John, well said.
Yeah.
This is Stop Eating My Popcorn on Bizz 99.9 FM Substitute Radio. Catch you later. And we're back. This is Stop Eating My Popcorn on Bizz 99.9 FM Substitute Radio. I am Glenn Blank, and I'm joined by John Smith, and we have just come out of the theatres of the new Wonder Woman movie. So let's get first impressions. Did you like the movie, John? Was it a good movie to watch?
I thought it was okay.
I definitely think it was more than what I was expecting. I was very worried that something really bad was going to happen, and it didn't, so I liked it. First of all, in terms of a female lead character, I was pleased. The Amazon warriors were not overly sexualized. They were shown to be very strong and skilled and very good warriors, and Wonder Woman was not overly sexualized. I think when she was fighting, it was very well choreographed, and it was very exciting to watch her fight. So I think, as far as a female lead goes, it is miles and miles ahead of Lara Croft and Catwoman.
I agree.
Some of the things that I had problems with were the characters. I didn't really understand what Diana's personality was. I mean, she liked fighting and she was a warrior, but I didn't understand what was driving her forward as she was going through her story, going through Europe, fighting. I couldn't figure out what were the tensions in her life, because, okay, if you've got someone like Superman or Batman, I can understand they have a mission in life that they want to achieve, and then they're faced with questions, self-doubt, am I doing the right thing? And it's that struggle that makes their character interesting. I just didn't understand what Diana was going through, so I didn't understand, what makes her character very interesting. Did you get it?
Yeah, I got that impression as well. And then also, I thought, like, in her character, she was really naive.
I think that's a very big cliche in Hollywood, where you have a woman who is very innocent, who doesn't understand things, coming into a man's world and having to have all these awkward things, like what is a toaster and what is love, and like...
Well, that stuff kind of made sense, though, because she came from a completely different world.
We've seen it before. Most of it is just ripped from the Fifth Element.
Yeah, but I thought more like she was naive in the way that she believed that everyone was inherently good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thought, so you have to, like, you're a child, you assume the best in everyone, and the coming of age to becoming an adult is actually learning that humans are imperfect, capable of great good and great evil. The best part of the whole movie, probably, that realization. The final villain, if the idea is to learn that humans are both good and evil, the villain, of course, is the idea that humans are completely, irredeemably evil, and it's just better to wipe them off the map. And that is not a new idea. I mean, you can go back to the first movie of the Dark Knight trilogy, where Ra's al Ghul says Gotham City is irredeemably corrupt, so we're going to burn it to the ground and rebuild from the ashes. And so in that sense, the villain isn't particularly unique, but I felt he was a convincing villain. I think he was interesting. The worst parts of the movie were probably the innuendo stuff, particularly the sexual tension between Diana and Steve. I felt that most of those were very predictable and uninteresting, and just like we've seen it all before. It's not interesting to look at.
It was kind of like as soon as they met, you were like, oh, here we go.
But I am glad that Steve died as a martyr, as a martyr, rather than get into some sort of awkward romance with Diana. As far as the fight scenes were concerned, I felt that the beach fight scene was absolutely awful. Lots of slow motion, lots of fast cuts, lots of weird camera angles. I had no idea what was going on. It was choreographed really awfully. It looked like it was a scene from 300. That's how bad it was. The other fight scenes were much, much better. The No Man's Land fight was very well done. The fight in the German military camp was very well done. And the final fight, I think, was mostly good. There were a few awkward cuts where you didn't actually see a transition to a different part of the fight, which was awkward. But other than that, I was mostly happy with it. It was well choreographed, it was well organized. You actually felt tension because you didn't know how she was going to be able to pull this through. So I found them exciting. What do you get out of this movie, John? What are some of the thoughts that really come to mind for you?
Well, I think in terms of like my taste in movies, definitely not my taste in movies, but I think I would have liked to have seen more character development. That would have been good.
Yeah. Speaking of character development, I said before that I didn't understand Diana's motivations or what made her drive forward, because all we saw as a child, she was fighting as a warrior and she liked the idea of being a warrior, and I just didn't understand what made her want to, like, what does she want to do? Does she want to be honourable? Does she want to achieve great things? I just didn't understand. The other person is Steve. I didn't understand Steve. There was this moment where Diana and Steve were having a heart-to-heart talk, and he began telling his story about someone once told me this, and he never went on with it. And I just felt like that was the moment to tell his story. This is who I am, this is where I grew up, this is what I've gone through in life, and this is what's made me the person I am, which is why I'm doing these things. But since that never happened, I didn't understand his character. So when he did these things, when he disobeyed orders when he disobeyed the first order to steal the notebook, when he disobeyed the second order to go back to Europe after getting into Britain, and then when he disobeyed the third order, which is to break into the gala and actually try to shut down the chemical manufacturing, all times obeying orders, and then his martyrdom. So 4 heroic acts that he was able to commit, and I don't understand any of them. What was driving him as a person? I don't know. Overall, I thought that Wonder Woman was a better movie than I was expecting. Other than the occasional references to the Wayne Enterprise, there was no mention at all of the Justice League, which is very good. It meant that the movie could stand on its own as a movie, and it wasn't just a lead-on to the Justice League movie. So it's a good standalone movie. It's presenting the female lead as a heroic warrior. There is a few moments when Diana is being introduced to a new male character, and there's that awkward moment where he makes a sexually enticing thing about her. There's plenty of those moments which you know are very cringeworthy. But other than those, it's mostly very good for presenting a female lead. I would say this is a very good movie. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. Closing remarks, John, what do you think?
I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10.
Well, now you've heard it. This is us talking about the new Wonder Woman movie.
And I am John Smith. Thanks for listening.
This has been Stop Eating My Popcorn on Bizz 99.9 FM Substitute Radio. Until we watch another movie, goodbye.
And now it's time for part 3 of this review, where after having spent a couple of days contemplating over the movie a bit more, chewing over the issues, reading other reviews of the movie, and looking at the arguments back and forth, I offer up a final analysis and criticism. On all major fronts, the movie exceeded expectations. Firstly, on having a female lead character in an action-adventure movie, she remained heroic and strong throughout, with only a minimum of dumb romance and sexualization. It was hundreds of miles away from Lara Croft in Tomb Raider and Catwoman, and much closer to something like Kill Bill. Secondly, it was a standalone movie within the DC Extended Universe that told the story of Wonder Woman properly and responsibly, neither just as a lead-in to the Justice League movie, nor a cheap piece of fan service for Wonder Woman comic book readers. It was a genuine movie that tried to tell the Wonder Woman story. As mentioned in the How It Should Have Ended review of the movie, this movie has raised the bar that the rest of the Justice League will have to live up to, because in all honesty, Wonder Woman is good enough that it doesn't need the Justice League tie-in. The tie-in is there, but there wasn't an overly obvious handoff to the Justice League. In many ways, this Wonder Woman movie can be compared with Batman Begins. It treats its character's story and world with respect. It tries to introduce new characters in a calm and serious way, and it has a confined story that it wants to tell properly and effectively. It doesn't fall into the utterly shallow and revolting world of titillating sex, unrealistic romance, over-the-top explosions, wild and confusing cuts, ridiculously choreographed fight scenes, or clunky, unpolished dialogue. When you compare it with much of the rotten, stinking garbage that Hollywood has been coming out with this past decade, Wonder Woman is quite a good movie. As Caroline Frampf from Vox put it, Wonder Woman could have given in to the relentless grimness that plagued Batman v Superman, or the blatant sexism that pulsed through Suicide Squad's veins. It could have been half-assed, exploitative, or maybe, worst of all, boring. Once it became clear that Wonder Woman was going to do everything in its Amazonian power to treat this hero with the respect she and every female hero deserves, something in me shifted. My shoulders dropped from where they had tensed up by my ears as I realized with an ecstatic stomach-swooping start that I could actually sit back, relax, and truly enjoy watching a woman save the world. Sure, there were lots of parts of the movie that were very poorly made, that were insulting to the viewer, and just a bunch of cheap tricks to manipulate emotions to compensate for bad storytelling tropes. But that's pretty much expected now from any major Hollywood flick these days. The first 20 minutes to half an hour was especially poor, with badly written dialogue, shallow character development, and plastic acting. The Amazon island of Themyscira seemed so unrealistic, one-dimensional, and unattractive, you never felt properly immersed into that world. It never felt like an actual living organism, with people going about their lives, working, sleeping, playing, but just this set-piece background for the approaching battle on the beach. Compare that with Moana, which was actually able to make you feel like you were there on the island, smelling the ocean, feeling the sand beneath your feet, the soft texture of grass and the rough texture of the trees. The island felt like an actual community of working, cooperating, socializing human beings. But Themyscira seemed nothing more than a dreamlike utopian paradise without any genuine aesthetic essence. Nothing concrete to really give life and meaning to its Amazonian inhabitants. The other part of Themyscira that I disliked was the dialogue. Hollywood has always been very bad at historicizing language, so that it can still make sense to the audience, but feels different from our own time. The examples of them trying to do this, from Thor to 300, have all been cliché-ridden, with poor grammar, and unfeeling and confusing. Same applies to the dialogue between the Amazonian women warriors in this movie. Gal Gadot did a terrible, embarrassing acting job as Wonder Woman and Diana. She was well and truly out-acted by the assisting characters, especially those played by Chris Pine and David Thewlis, who know their craft and are able to do high-quality work in their roles. Gal Gadot failed the most important job of an actor, which is to provide a wide range of emotions through different facial expressions, voice tones, and body language. She always looked the same throughout the movie, a bland, vacant expression across her face, where her cheekbones and jaw never move, and the only way you can tell what she's thinking is through following her eyes. A narrow range of speaking from soft to partial yelling, often completely inappropriate for the feel and direction of the scene, and her body never felt like it was out of place or put under any stress, but always in perfect position for her to do what she wanted. Gadot's professional background is, after all, modelling, and she only got into acting through her model work. That's not surprising, because she acts on screen more like a model than a proper thespian. And that's the end of the program. You've been listening to Stop Eating My Popcorn, the movie review and discussion show on Bizz 99.9 FM Substitute Radio. I'm Glenn Blank. Until I watch and review another movie, goodbye.